the wind's pushing us this way.
Okay.
So we're going to compensate for it. And how we compensate for it is I'm going to put the left wing down in the wind,
okay,
and then I'm going to use the rudder and maneuver the airplane just like this.
Yeah, okay, yep.
And as we go down, it's going to get rougher as we get close to that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Every time I'm on one of those commercial planes and someone claps when they land, I always make fun of them in my head. I'm totally going to clap if we nail this thing.
I'm going to totally be bombed if we don't.
Oh, so close, yet so far away. So that plane has 2 engines. We only have 1. I feel like we would have been better off than that one. I don't know why we didn't use that one.
It's a different mission. Every airplane's got its mission. This is a family, go places, learn to fly an airplane. That airplane seats 8 people, 2 pilots, corporate aircraft, about 250 mile an hour versus our 150 mile an hour.
So this plane shouldn't want to be that plane, and that plane should not want to be this plane. Different planes have different purposes.
Different planes have different purposes.
All right, well.
Well, good morning. Normally people don't clap when I start preaching, but I want to just say thank you guys for doing that. Hey, if this is your very first time here, my name is Keith. I'm one of the teaching pastors here at 242. And this weekend, like you saw in the video, we're wrapping up the series that we've been in called Change My Attitude Before It's Too Late. But before we get into that, I just want to say I'm hoping that every one of you are having a really great weekend. For me, I had a phenomenal weekend because I got the opportunity to hang out with some high schoolers at fall weekend. Do we have any high schoolers here, or did they all sleep? Any high schoolers? Make some noise. Okay, we got about 6 of them who got some sleep and came to church today. But they're going to put up some pictures in the background here. But it was just an incredible weekend. We had the largest high school fall weekend in the history of fall weekends. Not only that, yeah, that's something to clap about. But also we had, and this is really what we want to rejoice about, is we had 11 kids get baptized yesterday at fall weekend. So let's give it up for God. I also want to just say from me to you, for all of those of you who are adult volunteers and you gave up your weekend to invest in students, what you did matters, and we really appreciate you. So one more time, let's give it up for our volunteers. Now, with that being said, like I said, we're in this series, Change My Attitude Before It's Too Late. Now, the reason we've been doing this series is because we all know intuitively that our attitudes have consequences, that they really matter. How we respond to life really is directed a lot by our attitudes. John Maxwell once said that your attitude, it's the librarian of your past, it's the speaker of your present, and it's the prophet of your future. So if you were to talk to John Maxwell and you say, hey, Maxwell, tell me my altitude. Predict to me where I'm going in life. How far am I going to get in life? What John would say is, show me your attitude and I will show you your altitude. So we've been talking about the power and the importance of attitude. Now, today we're going to wrap it up by talking about this really important attitude in Numbers chapter 11. So if you got a Bible or a Bible app, I want to give you a moment to get to Numbers chapter 11. But while you're getting to Numbers chapter 11, I also want you to know that this series is based on a book that was written by James McDonald called Lord, Change My Attitude Before It's Too Late. So if you're interested in getting a little bit deeper into this topic, that's a great book that I recommend. And even just thinking about the title of that made me think that that little prayer, Lord, change my attitude before it's too late. I wonder if some of you have been praying that lately. Maybe you've been praying that about your marriage. Maybe you've been praying that about your kids. Maybe you've been praying that about your future. And if you're praying that about your kids, I just want to say, I get you. There's no judgment from me because I understand I've got 4 kids. The other day, I was just sitting there in my house doing something really important, and my 6-year-old runs in the room and he's crying. He's weeping his eyes out. I said, Christian, what's wrong with you? He said, Ben punched me in the back. So his older brother punched him in the back. And like I said, I was doing something really important. I don't know exactly what I was doing. I was probably either reading my Bible, praying, watching college football, listening to Hillsong, something like that. So I'm doing that. I called Ben in. I said, Ben, did you punch your brother in the back? He said, yeah, I punched my brother in the back. I said, why did you do it? He said, I did it because he was getting on my nerves. So I said, Ben, I'm going to show you what it feels like. And so I said, turn around. And I punched him in his back as hard as I possibly could. By the way, I'm totally kidding. Some of you are like, you were saying amen, and you're like, no, Pastor, that's bad, real bad. What kind of church did I just go to? But anyway, the reason I tell you that story is I get the struggle to have a good attitude. You know, I was also thinking this week, you know, as I came away from high school fall weekend, if most of us who are here in the room had an opportunity to talk to our high school self, we were able to go back in time, I wonder what we would say. I think the majority of us would encourage our high school self to watch our attitudes. Our attitude towards money, our attitude towards relationships. I think most of the parents in the room, here's what we would say to our high school self. Listen to your pastors and your parents. Can I get an amen from the parents? So if there's any high schoolers in the room, all 7 of you guys, let me just say this to you. Your attitudes matter. And you have an opportunity right now. You don't have to live a life that's full of pain and regret. You can make good choices right now that will make a difference in your life. Now, what we see with the children of Israel is they made some really bad choices because they got confused about this middle season that they were in. See, what's going to happen for them is they were born in slavery. For 430 years, they were slaves in Egypt. Now, for most of us, we can't imagine being a slave, but I just want you to think for a moment about what it would feel like to be a slave. To wake up every day with no sense of identity. You're only known as the property of another group of people. They probably walked around with branding on them that denoted that they were property. They probably were not even referred to by their own name. They were probably referred to as slave number 1175. But then Moses shows up. He says, God has come to deliver you and set you free. He appeared to me in a burning bush. Now, I just want to say, as kind of a side note, if I was Moses and I'm just kind of going about my life and, you know, it's getting close to Halloween and a bush starts talking to me, I would think to myself, I'm having an acid trip. I don't know what has just happened here. I'm about to be in a beautiful mind part 2. This is bad. But for Moses, he's not having a break with reality. He's having an encounter with God. And so what's going to happen is he will confront the king of Egypt and say, God said, let my people go. So they leave Egypt and they're on their way to the promised land. And the promised land is what they've always wanted. It's a land that flows with milk and honey. So they leave Egypt on the way to the promised land, but they find themselves walking through the wilderness. See, the way I said it last week at the Ann Arbor campus is for Moses, before he can take them where they want to go, he has to first lead them to a place they don't want to be, the wilderness. There's a journey. There's a journey to what God wants you and where he wants you to go. And let me just say something about the journey. God's journey always starts with, he sets us free from sin, but he doesn't just want us to be free from sin. He wants us to live an abundant life, to live in the promised land. There's a journey in the process. And I just want to say this for anybody who's maybe new to faith or you're maybe not even considered following Jesus yet. If you're kind of considering, should I be a Christian? Should I follow Jesus? Should I be a Christ follower? Here's what I want you to know. God doesn't just want to set you free from sin. He wants you to live an abundant life. One of the greatest lies about Christianity is that God's trying to take something from you. No, he's got an abundant life, but there's a season of struggle. There's this wilderness season. And this is where the bad attitudes start coming out. When they're walking through the wilderness, when they're in that uncomfortable spot, they start complaining, they start being rebellious. But here's what you need to understand about God. The reason he's bringing you through the wilderness is because he's trying to expose those things in you that need to come out of you so you can enter into what he has for you. I like how Carey Nieuwhof says this. He says, if God wants to take you deep, if God wants to go deep with you, it's because he wants to take you far. If God wants to go deep with you, it's because he wants to take you far. And for some of you, you're in the wilderness season right now. And you don't like it. And so you're trying to rush the wilderness season. But what God would say is, I'm using this time to bring some stuff out of you. Look how Moses is going to refer to this in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 2 and 3. This is after the 40 years of the wilderness is already over it. He's reflecting. He says, verse 2, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years. Now, here's the purpose of the wilderness, to humble and test you. In order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands, he humbled you, causing you to hunger and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your ancestors had known, to teach you that man does not live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. Now, for those of you who are familiar with scripture, that might ring a bell to you because this is the very same text that Jesus quotes when he's in the wilderness for 40 days and the devil tempts him. He says to Jesus, hey, if you're the Son of God, turn that stone into bread. And Jesus says, God did not tell me to do that. So I want you to know something, devil. Man does not live by bread alone. See, in that tough time, God was trying to work in God's people's character. And God says, that's what the wilderness is all about. I want you to know the wilderness time in your life, it is not a waste. But it's easy to get frustrated. Like there's some of you, and you're single, you're in a wilderness in your single life. You're a Christian and you're single and you're ready to mingle. You just can't find anybody to mingle with on christianmingle.com. Are you guys awake at this 10:30 service? Or are you gonna make me do this by myself? The wilderness times are hard, but yet God's working in his people. See, this last attitude that we see him working on here is in Numbers chapter 11. Look at this, Numbers chapter 11, verse 4. It says, the rabble with them began to crave other food. And again, the Israelites started wailing. Can you get the picture of a whiny 2-year-old? You can see their immaturity, they're wailing. If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we ate in Egypt at no cost. Also the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. Is anybody getting hungry yet? But then they say, we've lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. Now, God's people were slaves in Egypt. God delivers them, and every day he's providing manna for them, fresh baked bread. But these guys are not happy. They're not enjoying the manna. And they say, remember the good old days in Egypt where we used to have melons? And I don't even know what a leek is. That sounds nasty to me, but they liked it. And remember we had onions and garlic. Oh, the good old days. Have you ever noticed that the good old days are a lot better in your mind than they were in reality? They were slaves in Egypt, but what they're in right now is an uncomfortable place of growth, and they start recreating memories to be better than what they were. And we all do this. See, there are some of you in the room right now, and you made a strategic choice to invest more time in your family, so you took a pay cut. But there's moments where you start reflecting and you remember the good old days of having a corner office, having the power. But what you forget about is all the traveling and spending away from your family and your marriage struggling. We forget about the choices and what came along with that. Here's the very first lesson that we're going to learn about this covetous attitude that we're going to talk about today. Is the very first lesson is this, is a coveting attitude is wanting wrong things. It's wanting wrong things. God doesn't have a problem when giving them meat. He just doesn't want them to have the meat of Egypt. Because the meat of Egypt came with chains. But they've forgotten about the chains. They've forgotten about the misery. They've forgotten about the fact that in order to eat that fish and to eat those melons, somebody told you to get up at this time, go to bed at this time. Somebody could beat you without notice because you were property. I like how Dr. Dan Gilbert from University of Harvard describes this in his book, Stumbling on Happiness. He says, our memory is less like a collection of photographs, and it's more like a collection of an impressionist artist who's taken considerable liberty with his subject. So he says, your memory is not like these factual truths that's stored up. It's really more like this emotional journey that we go on and we recreate it, which is why our memory is hard to be accurate at times. And that's why Moses is going to say, remember what it really was like. That's what the book of Deuteronomy is all about. Remember what God really did in your life and remember the purpose. When I think about this idea about coveting is wanting wrong things and how our memory can deceive us, I think about growing up in Louisiana. When I was reading it, it talked about fish. And see, for me, I eat fried fish. Anybody know anything about fried fish up here in Michigan? And then not only did we have fried fish, but we had crawfish etouffee and boudin and jambalaya and watermelon. I'm like, I miss that great food. But here's what I don't miss. I do not miss how hot it was. In Louisiana, it'd be 350 degrees in the middle of December. And you know what I also don't miss? I don't miss people marrying their cousins. I mean, it was bad times down there. Which, by the way, both of my parents had the same last name when they got married, but we don't ask questions in Louisiana. We just keep on going. I don't miss all the bad stuff that was down there, but I miss the food. And there's some of you, you're in a season right now where God is trying to take you to the next level in your character. And what you're doing right now is your memory is playing tricks on you. Saying, go back to that life that you used to have. It was so much fun. But you forget about the fun that you were having came with a price. So coveting is number one, is wanting wrong things. But here's the second lesson we learned from them is coveting is also wanting the right things for the wrong reason. See, like I told you, meat is not the problem. There's going to be a time where they're going to enter into the promised land. They're going to eat all the meat that they want, but they want it for the wrong reason. What they said is, here's why they want the meat, is they said, we've lost our appetite for this manna. So they're wanting the meat to fill this unhealthy appetite. Let me talk to you about our appetites. What you should know about humanity, this is what the Bible teaches us, is that we were all born with some unhealthy appetites. When we become followers of Christ, we get a new heart, the Bible talks about. We get a new nature, and so we have an appetite for things that are good, for things that are holy. And so what God wants to do, though, is he wants to help us kill those unhealthy appetites, because those unhealthy appetites will destroy us. And here's the truth about an unhealthy appetite. It is never satisfied. There's always this craving for more, for more, for more. And so what actually God is doing, he's saying, I'm giving you this manna as a way to help detox you. That stuff that you want, it's not healthy. It's caused you to be dependent. It brings you to slavery. So I don't want that for you. You want something good, but you want it for the wrong reason. And there's oftentimes that when we get what we want, we realize that's not what we really want. Have you ever had that happen? I get what I want, but it's not what I really want. And that's why there's so many people who jump from relationship to relationship, job to job, because they want it, but they realize they didn't really want it. They wanted it many times for the wrong reason. As I say that, I'm reminded of the story about these three guys are walking on the beach and they see this old lamp. One of the guys says, man, I'm going to rub this lamp and see what happens. And so out of the lamp pops a genie. And the genie says, hey, I will grant each of you one wish. The first guy says, you know what I want? I want $100 million. Poof, like that, he gets $100 million. Other guy's like, that's kind of cool. He says, what do you want? He says, I want a massive mansion. So boom, he gets a massive mansion. Third guy says, if it works like that, I want to be irresistible to women. Like that, he becomes a box of chocolates. Sometimes you don't really want what you wish for. So what God is trying to do is he's saying the manna was meant to be temporary. So understand that. Because here's the third thing that you should know about coveting. A coveting attitude is wanting the right thing at the wrong time. At the wrong time. See, God's going to bless them eventually. But there's a message in the manna. There's a lesson in the manna. It's learning how to not live by bread alone, but to trust in the word of the Lord. If we don't have time to read it, but if you would continue in Deuteronomy chapter 8, if you get down to verses 16 through 18, what God is going to say is, the reason that I gave you the manna was so that it would go well with you in the end. And so you would understand that part of my covenant was to help you understand that it's not by your power that I bless you. And not only is it not by your power that I bless you, it's so that my covenant would be confirmed. What covenant is God talking about? He's talking about that covenant he made a long time ago in Genesis chapter 12 to Abraham, where God said to Abraham, you are blessed to be a blessing. There's a purpose to the blessing. But sometimes we don't get that if you don't walk through seasons of manna. Seasons where you don't have enough, seasons where you have to trust God. Because what you think then is everything that comes to me is for me. But when you walk through a season of manna, you learn how to be content. You learn to be grateful. Now, as I'm just being really transparent with you guys, I've learned this in my life. I remember the very first church that I worked for, I made $300 a month. That church had a mentality, philosophy that went like this. Lord, if you keep him humble, we'll make sure he stays poor. And, you know, I stayed humble, I stayed poor. It worked out. But I will tell you this, as I walked through that season, what I learned is how to trust God. And I learned in that season of my life, the reason I was doing ministry was not for money, because I wanted to honor God. I saw God protect me, take care of me. Now, I was in college at the time. I was still living with my parents, so things were good. The next job that I got, I was making $22,000 a year. It wasn't a whole lot, but it was a lot more than I had before. And I'm gonna tell you something. When you go from $300 a month to $22,000 a year, there's a different attitude you have. I think one of the challenges with a generation that we have now is the entitlement comes because they don't know how to go from the bottom to the top. So sometimes if you're at the bottom, that's not the worst place to be because God's working in you. And then something happened for Jen and I. When we moved to Southern California, we kind of broke through. We went to a whole nother level. And then I realized, okay, God's blessed me now. We're not in a state of struggle anymore. I'm blessed to be a blessing. And I can remember we took this challenge one day to just bless people for no reason at all. So like when we're at the checkout, sometimes, and we don't do this all the time, so like if you're behind me, this might not happen to you, but just warning you. But to pay for the person behind us. And I can remember one of the first times I got one of those senses from God, like this is your opportunity to do that. I had a little bit of fear hit me. Like there's some of you, when you walked in and you heard about the big give, you went, oh. But what if God wants to bless you to be a blessing to people around the world who need it? Here's what I love about the big give. This is not about making 242 bigger. This is about being a blessing to people around the world. And I remember when I did that, I'll tell you, this is how I felt. Initially, I felt fear. But when I walked out of that store, I felt freedom. And for some of you, today is going to be a moment where you break through. You understand that you're blessed to be a blessing. You're blessed to impact others. And that's what God was trying to teach to people, but their attitude wouldn't let them see it. Which leads me to the final thought here, the final lesson here, is that coveting is wanting the right things in the wrong amount. This is one of the few times in scriptures, if you read Numbers chapter 11, verses 18 through 20, what's gonna happen for God's people is it's one of the few times God's gonna answer a request that he doesn't wanna answer to teach a lesson. He's gonna say, okay, you guys want meat, you want meat? Okay, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna give you so much meat for a month that it's gonna come out of your nostrils. You can read it in scripture, it literally says that. So they get all the food that they want, and instead of it making them happy, it made them sick. And what that teaches us is this, is why does God want to give us more? So we can be a blessing. So we can be a blessing to others. Now, as I'm being real transparent here, I remember when I moved here a year and a half ago, we were doing something similar to this where we were sponsoring children. We were giving people an opportunity to sponsor children. Jen and I, we'd already broken through the ceiling, but we made some excuses. I said to myself, we're busy. We just moved. We got all these unexpected things. And then when it came around this time, I said, no more excuses for me. God, you blessed me to be a blessing, so we're going to do it. Because we get a chance to make a difference in someone's life. See, I think sometimes when we watch the news and we see all the bad stuff on the news, we think because we can't do everything, then we don't do anything. We might not be able to change the whole world, but we can change someone's life. And that's what I love about what we're doing this weekend. Now, let me finish this message up by saying this. God's solution to a covetous attitude is contentment. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, here's what Paul would say to Timothy. He's gonna say, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing in this world, and we can take nothing out of it. So we should be content with food and clothing. So you translate food and clothing, basically, when my basic needs are met, then I understand that God then wants me to start using what he's given me, my resources, my influence, my affluence to make a difference in the lives of other people. And for some of you, God's calling you to take that step. Maybe not all of you. For some of you, God's just calling you to be content. What you needed to hear this morning is you've been walking through life saying, oh, this is not fun, this is not frustrating. You don't realize that what you're walking through has less to do with what's going on around you and it has more to do with what God is doing in you. And so you just need to learn how to get content. For others of you, God's calling you to take a step in generosity to be a blessing to someone. At the other church that I worked at in Michigan several years ago, we worked with a ministry in the Dominican Republic. There was a guy that we met there who sponsored children. And I remember asking him and saying, tell me your story. Why do you have such a passion to sponsor children? And what he told me is he said, because when I was a kid, somebody sponsored me. I was a little kid, and my whole life I was going to grow up in poverty, and I was going to be like every other statistic. But somebody sponsored me. I got a chance to go to college here in the States. And when I got a chance to go back, I said, I'm going to do something to make a difference in someone's life. Here's what I would say to anybody who's in a season of challenge right now. Don't run from it, because maybe it is the thing that God is using to give you compassion. When I meet people who are struggling financially, my first thought is not judgment. It's like, I get what it's like to be there. And oftentimes that's what motivates me to do something. For some of you, God will call you to sponsor a child. For some of you, God may even call you to take a step further. We have the Catholic Charities of Livingston County out there. And what they do is they do a lot of welfare services, and among those is adoption. For some of you, God may even call you to learn more about adoption. And if he does, God will bless you. And maybe your story will end up like Stephanie's story. I want you guys to watch this.
I have always grown up thinking that I would follow in the footsteps of my parents and get married young and have kids and have a family. And I really feel like being a mom is what I am meant to do. And the older I got and the more of my friends and family who started getting in relationships and I wasn't, that was pretty challenging. I think through getting more involved with church and being more connected with church, I feel like there really is a standard that I'm looking for, and that's not really something I want to sacrifice. I've always surrounded myself with kids in teaching and in church and in life. And I went to a trauma seminar through school and was just kind of opened to this idea of fostering and the need that there is. And then I started meeting some more people through church and life that were becoming foster parents. And then something just clicked that it was the right thing and the right time. And once I made that decision, it was 100% this is the right thing to do. There's a lot of information that they need and things that they check. I had to keep reminding myself again that God has a plan, and the little one who ended up coming to me just wasn't ready, so I was, waiting a bit. But in the end, again, you can see that it was the right thing, that God had a plan, and the little one I have is amazing. This journey I never would have imagined, but I love that little boy, and he has brought happiness and joy and just opened my eyes to a whole new world. God's plan might look different than what I certainly thought that my life would look like, but my life is filled with so much joy and happiness that God has put there just in a different way than I thought.